To the third session of Spreadsheets. Today we're going to do a quick recap of the last week's session, and there should be a link appearing on the screen now for you to be able to find last week's session. What we covered last week was looking at the beginnings of formulas. This week we're going to do a little bit more about that. We're going to talk about what the difference between an absolute and relative cell is. We're also going to look at graphs or charts, as they're sometimes called, and we're going to look at conditional formatting. So we've got a lot to get through in this 30 minutes. So let's just do a quick recap of what we did last week. In this monthly total cell here, I'm going to start just by adding up just the mortgage and car loan payments, just as a quick example. So we're going to do a formula. So we start with the equal sign, as we always do, and then I'm going to do it by using the mouse to click. So I'm going to say equals 91, which is in cell B15. We can see the B here, and we can see the 15 over here on the left-hand side. And to that, I'm going to add the cell above it, which is B14. Okay, and I'm going to press return. So that is, and we can see up here at the top of the screen, that is a very simple formula there. I've said B15, so what's in the square of B15, I've added it to B14. Okay, then we progressed from that to using the idea of the sum formula, where we type the word sum, and then it's going to sum whatever is in brackets. And then I can also click and drag all the way down, put the closing bracket on, press return, and then we have a very quick way of creating a formula that adds up everything in that column. So that's a lot of what we went over last week. Then we learnt that if we move the cursor to the bottom right hand corner of a cell, it will turn, the little cross will change to a black plus, and we can click and drag that all the way along, and it will copy those formulas all the way across every row. And as it copies it, if we see this one is B3 to B15, in the next cell it's C3 to C15, and in the next cell it's D3 to D15, and so it's copied that all the way across, which is great. Okay, so now let's see when sometimes this dragging, because this dragging is a great function, you know, it really speeds up the use of formulas, and I use it all the time. But let's see when sometimes Excel can have a little bit of a problem with it, and let's see how we can get around that problem. So let's just imagine that you want to work out how much VAT we paid on these goods we bought, and let's just assume that they all have VAT. And 2009, I think the VAT was 17.5%. I want it to be for the purpose of this, so let's just say it is. It might have been down to 15 at that point, I can't remember. But anyway, so it's 17.5%. So let me type in 17.5 in this box, and I've already configured it to be percentage, and I'll show you what. Now look what happens. Press return, and it changes to 18%. It's rounded it up. Now I want that to be exactly 17.5%. and I want it to display 17.5%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the box, and I'm going to choose Format Cells. And in the Format Cells dialog box, you can see I've already told it it's going to be a percentage. I'd already clicked on that previously, and that gives us the little percentage sign. But number of decimal places, I hadn't changed. That's still at 0. So I'm going to increase the number of decimal places to 1, and we can then see that our little sample up here reflects what's actually in the box. And when I press return, we should have 17.5%. So let's do the formula to work this out. So let's see how much VAT we paid in January, assuming we paid VAT on everything. I don't know whether that's true, but it doesn't matter for the purpose of this. So so we're going to do a formula. So we're going to start with equals. And how do you work it out? Well, it's simple. You multiply the amount by the VAT, and because the VAT is a percentage, it should give us the amount we paid. So let's just have a look at that sum. So the sum is going to be B17. So notice here as well, we're multiplying the result of a formula. So it's not good. The fact that there's a formula in that box, it doesn't matter. We're just looking at the number that gets created from that formula. So we'll say take whatever is in B17 once all the calculations have been done, and I'm going to say multiply. And remember, the multiply was the star key, and then we're going to times it by the VAT value, which is in cell B22. Press return, and we can see that we paid £111.8. Now this is an example where we've got too many decimal points. So let's have a look at that again. So we're going to right click, choose format, because we only need to have it down to 2 decimal points. And it was set to general. So I've chosen number because we know it's a number, and that's where I can then opt. The general one doesn't have any specific things. So I'm just going to change it to be a number, and I'm just going to I could have 3 decimal places, and we see it all gets reflected in this little sample box up here, but we just want 2 because it's just, there's 99, it goes up to 99 pence obviously. Press return, and there we go. Okay, now then, let's do our amazing trick, because we know that it works. I'm just going to take the bottom right hand corner, I'm going to drag it all the way along, and I'm going to copy that formula all the way across. Oh dear, something seems to have gone wrong. Let's have a look. So let's have a look in the next cell, and we can see at the top here what the formula is. So the formula is C17, let's have a look, that's C17, so that's correct, times C22. There's nothing in C22, so what it's done is it's correctly guessed that we wanted the February total to move along, but it is also then assumed that the value it's going to multiply it is also going to move. But it's not. We always want it to refer to this cell with 17.5% in it. So how do we fix that? It's very easy, very, very easy indeed. All we do is we use the dollar sign. The dollar sign in Excel has a very specific meaning, and it just means don't mess. So I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of the C, okay? So I'm coming in and I'm amending the formula, because before it just went C22. And now I'm going to amend that to say $C, $22. And that means don't mess with the column. C is like the $C is don't mess with my column C, leave that alone. And the $22 is don't mess with my row. Leave that one alone. So let's press actually no, that should be 21 because it moved it across. Okay. Bugger. What's going on here? Oh, it's B. It should be 22. It should be B. So we can see that it now says $B, $22. Okay, so the dollar in front of the B means keep everything, don't move it from column B, whatever you do, and the $22 means don't move it out of row 22. Okay, let's press return, and we can see there that we now get the right amount. We paid £78 VAT in that month. So now let's see what happens when I drag the amended formula. Drag it all the way to the right, and there we go, it works. And what we'll see now is we click in any one of these formulas, and it's moved the first part to D17 because there's no sort of protection, there's no dollar signs. But it's not moved, it's always the B, the B22 is locked in because of the dollar signs. And this will be E17, and again the B. So the dollar signs just mean don't mess with the figures. And you have to do 2 because you have to do 1 for the column and 1 for the row. Don't mess with my row, don't mess with my column. And you can actually just have, not wishing to confuse the issue, but we could, for this one, for example, it's always going to stay on row 22 anyway. It's not changing from row, it's just changing the column as we jump. So this would actually work if we take away the column one, the one next to 22. So I'm going to click and drag that across, and that still works because it's only we didn't want it to change to the next column. Sometimes if we were dragging things downwards, it would then change down the rows, but we were just dragging it sideways here. So I've just opened up another graph there. I've just opened up another worksheet, and we're going to make a graph. Way to start there, Dan. Great. So I'm going to make a graph over some of this information up here. Okay, so we've got year 1, year 2, year 3, team A, team B, team C. So to start off with, nice and simple, let's do a graph for just team A. Okay, so I've clicked and selected the rows and columns that I want to create a graph around, and then I'm going to click the chart wizard button here. And what that does is it brings up this way. Now, I'm going to explain each of these options individually, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit finish. And what do we get? Straight away, we get a graph created. Okay, very basic, very simple graph. But it's just going to use this just to explain some of the basic stuff. So you can see it's dropped it onto this little white rectangle here, and I can go to the edge of this rectangle and I can move this. Okay, so I can move this. So this is moving a graph. Okay, which might be one of your screenshots. I can also resize this graph. Okay, which may be another screenshot or the same one. So I can move and resize a graph. Okay, I can move individual elements inside of the graph. I can click and drag and just move. It's a bit fiddly getting these inner ones sometimes. And so I double click there. But I can move this around. Come on, please move. I said it was fiddly. There we go. God, it really is fiddly. So I can move that one around, and I can move the name around as well if I want to. Okay, so and what we see straight away is you can just visualize that data a lot clearer. It's a lot easier to understand data sometimes when it's in a graph, as long as you choose the right graph for the technique, for the data. Okay, so that's a good initial first graph. So when I click on it, we see these eight sections, these 8 little dots appear on it, and that tells me that the whole thing is selected rather than sort of just this inner bit. Okay, so I'm just going to click. So I want to see these dots all around the edge, and look over here. Look, we can see there's some purple, so we can see that we're using these 3-year headings, and we can see that we've got this data here, and we can see that we've got this name here. So with it selected, I can go back to my chart wizard and I can carry on working on it. Okay, so let's see what the options are that we get, and then we'll build it up into a little bit more complexity. So we go back to chart wizard, and we get all different types of charts that we can create. So look, going down this left hand side, a column chart, a bar chart, same as a column chart but just going the other way, line charts, pie charts, okay, scatter charts, these little dots to represent things, funky looking charts made out of pyramids and cones. They're essentially just column charts but with different types of icons. And then to the right, each time you select a chart type, there's a whole bunch of different charts of that type. So for example, you can press and hold and you can just view them. You can just have a look. So I'm pressing and holding, go down to a 3D one. Some people like these 3D ones. Sometimes I find that they're a bit tricky to read, but they can look really cool. So there we go. So let's have a look what a pie chart might look like. Okay. The label's not very good, you could notice that, but we could amend that, so that's quite good. Let's see what a 3D exploded pie chart, so exploded just means it's sort of, the segments are dragged away. So I quite like that, that's quite nice. Okay, but for the time being, I'm going to stick with a column chart. And we've got custom types here, which are just some predefined ones, but we don't need to worry about that because we're going to customize our own chart. Okay, so these are just pre-done ones. That, so this one's got the data series at the bottom, and I'll show you how to do all this sort of stuff anyway. So we're going to just pick nice standard chart, column chart. So we've clicked finish last time, but we're going to click next, and we're going to look at the individual different things we can do. So we can swap things around a little bit. So that's the one thing we can do here, is we can either have it representing each column representing a year, That's if we choose rows. If we choose columns, then we have each team, so 1 year, so this is then, and this way round would make more sense if we had more data. So we'll look at that in a moment. So let's have a look at the, let's just reset it back to how it is by default. So each column represents a year. I think that's easy enough to understand. So let's have a look at the series tab. And let's just see where things are getting their name from. I'm going to start at the bottom here. So the category X axis label, what does that mean? Okay, so you may be aware that there is such a thing as an X and Y axis. Okay, the X and Y axis is just the horizontal or vertical line of the chart. Okay, so this is the X axis. The X axis runs horizontally, just like a row does. Okay, and the X axis at the moment we can see is year 1, year 2, year 3. The Y axis always runs vertically, just like a column. Okay, and for me, and it's a bit tenuous, but a Y in my head is taller than an X. I don't know whether it is in your head. I don't know whether you often go around comparing heights of X and Y's, but in my head, Y's are taller. And for that reason, that helps me remember that Y's go up and down, and X's, little fatties, go side to side. I went a bit far with it there. Doesn't really work. But so Y's go up and down, X's go across. Okay, and you'll notice that it does, refers to this X and Y, so it's quite good to know which one's which. Okay, so that's great. So that's what that means. What is the data inside? Well, let's see if we can decode this this sentence here. So it says equals. So we know it's like it's pointing to something. It's some sort of formula or something like that. And it says equals sheet 1. All right. Well, that's just the first sheet. Our workbook here has got 3 sheets in it. Sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. So this is saying sheet 1. And that little exclamation mark, that just means that the information before that was a sheet name. Okay, because you can change these names. You could call that, the sheet. You can name each sheet individually. And then what do we see? Well, then we see our friend that we just learnt about, the dollar sign, $B, $1. So we know that really just means B1. Okay, so that means B1. So, and then a colon. Well, we did colon last week. Colon means 2. Okay, and then we've got $D, $1. So we ignore the dollars because the dollars are just like protective. They just mean don't mess with it, don't change it. All right. So what this is saying is, if I'm reading it right, and I'll check it in a second, this is saying, let's take our axis labels from B1 to D1. So that's B1, C1 and D1. So let's look what's in B1, C1 and D1. And yeah, phew, I read it right. B1 says year 1, C1 says year 2, D1 says year 3. And we can see those represented along the graph. All right. So what that is saying there is saying I've got my data from this row here, essentially. Okay. The name, okay, so what is put in our little box up here, okay, where did it get that from? It got that from A2, and we can look here in A2, so it says sheet 1, A2, and don't mess with it because it's got the dollar signs. And then where's it got the values from? Well, it's got the values from sheet 1, B, $B, $2, okay, 2, because of the colon, $D, $2. All right, so it's just taken the values from B2 to D2. Okay, these may seem confusing at first, but once you just ignore, in my brain when I'm looking at this, I ignore this bit because I just know that means the sheet. I ignore these dollar signs because I know that means just don't mess with it. And all I'm actually seeing here is I just see B2 colon 2 D2. Okay, this is just A2, not to anything else. That's a specific pointing at one cell. And this one, I just see B2, B1, D1. Okay, so that's great. So that's that explained. Let's click on the next button. And what do we have here? So, I don't know whether you remember when you were at school, but they used to, if you ever did a chart, my teachers always used to harp on about you've got to give it a title. Okay, so let's give this a better title. Team A, sales over, help if I could type, 3 years. Okay, and again, look, so and it pops it in. Team A, sales over 3 years. Category X axis. Well, that's year 1, year 2. That's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we need to add in any more information. But these numbers going up, what are they? Are they? Well, let's imagine that this is a massive company, and that this is the sales in millions. Okay, and it's in what, pounds? Okay, oops, not 3 pounds. Shift 3, Dan. Shift 3. Okay, and we see. Look at that, lovely. In millions of pounds. It's just put that along there. So we're just labelling things up. We're just making things a bit easier to see. Okay, so let's see what else we can do. We can choose whether we have these things displayed here. Okay, by turning these on and off. Not really going to change anything there. Grid lines, nothing to write home about. Makes it easier to read. I'd have some on. You can turn all these minor ones on, but I think it just makes it look messy. You can also have them vertically as well if you want to, but I don't think we do for this. The legend is this little thing here that says team. So what team it's referring to. You can put this in different places. Okay. You can just choose different options to put it in. I'm going to put it at the bottom. I think I like that. Data labels. I don't really use them. They look quite messy, especially when you have bigger graphs, but it just puts the figures on there. And data table, this can look quite nice sometimes. I'll just tick it and show you what it means. It just adds the data that it's taken from to the bottom of the graph. So sometimes that's nice, sometimes that's not. Okay, so these are all quite simple. These are all just for marking it up and changing how it's going to look when it's viewed. Okay, so I'm just going to press next, because look, we're on step 3 of 4, so we're nearly there. Okay. And the last step is, where's it going to put the chart? All right. So by default, as we saw, it just threw it in the middle of sheet 1. Well, let's put it in a different sheet. Let's put it in sheet 2. Okay. And then I just choose finish. And what happens? Well, now we get a different type of graph. We get a graph. So we've got a spreadsheet. Sheet 2 here, showing us the graph, and it's just, you know, we've been able to customize it the way we wanted to. We've been able to put a name at the top of it. We've got a nice labeling of our y-axis there with millions. We've got the legend here at the bottom, and I can just drag it around and change the size of it. Okay, so that's great. I'm actually just going to delete that, and I'm going to go back to sheet 1, and let's see what happens if I drag around all 3. So obviously last time I just did 1 row. This time let's have a series of different rows in. Okay, so, and I'm just going to press the wizard button. Again, I'm going to just stick with the basic one. And this time, do you remember what I said last time? When you switch between columns and rows, watch what happens now. So at the moment we've got year 1, year 2, year 3, and up here it's got like team A, team B, team C. When I change this to columns, it flicks and it puts team A, team B and team C at the bottom and years 1, 2 and 3 at the top. Okay, so it has a really good attempt at trying to, or allow you to configure to change things around. So I'm going to have this done by years. Okay, and click next, and I'm just going to say 3 teams sales over 3 years. Wish I could type better. Okay, so category x-axis, year 1, year 2, year 3. I think that's just like before. We know that the y is the one going up. So let's say millions, because that's what we're dealing with here, in pounds. I like that. What else did we change? I like the legend to be at the bottom. Now, actually, it looks a bit cramped like that. Do you know, I don't even like that. Well, it gets in the way, but obviously without the legend, you don't know what each of the charts refer to. So let's keep it on the right. This is where the data table starts to look more interesting when we've got more data. So let's show the data table, and you can see that quite a bit. So I'm going to have the data table shown this time. choose next again. So you can see, look, there's only, you pick your chart type. You really here, you're just customizing whether you want it via columns or rows. You can see everything change around there. And where things are labeled that we looked at here. Now that we've got like, we've introduced more series, we can see that different series of data are dropped in here, and these values are changing for each of them. They're just all pointing to different places. And we could add more data in manually, but I like to do it automatically. Then we've got labeling it and just a bit of presentation, and then finally where it's put. And this time, instead of putting it in sheet 2 like I did last time, I'll put it in sheet 1. So I'll hit the finish button, and there we go. We've got a graph that's labelled. This time we can see the data. Now, maybe I would actually have made more sense of putting this on sheet 2 because we can see the data here. So let's just see. I'm actually going to press the chart button. I'm going to flick through to my 4th option. And this time I'm just going to choose sheet 2. I'm going to say finish. And it's taken it from sheet 1 and put it in sheet 2. I could have copied and pasted it across, but I just wanted to show you that you can always just go back into the wizard. So let's make a huge change to something. Let's change it horizontally and then just hit finish. And look, we can see all the data remains, but my type of chart. And because we've got the data series, look, the millions doesn't look as good there. So I'll just reformat that. So I just click on the chart, go to the chart wizard. I'll just choose column again and press finish. So we can dip in and out and make changes to the charts as we're going. I'm actually going to remove that data label. I don't really like it. So it's on the 3rd option, data table. I'm just going to remove that. Say finish. I prefer it without the data table. Just want to show you one little trick, but I like it. So we can look. Can you see? I can go in and notice that as I click on these, it's selecting all of the different columns that have got the same data in. Okay. Now watch this. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to choose Format Data Series. Okay. And we can check. This is where we can, I don't like the yellow, let's have it in green. Just press OK. Okay, look, it changes the legend to reflect that it's green, all right? And that's funky, and I'm going to right click on it again, and I'm going to choose Format Data Series, and we can change all sorts of things. And look, there's this Fill Effects button here, and you can start getting things textural, adding texture to them. So look, now they're starting to look a little bit more, a bit of gradient's been applied there. But what I really want to show you, and this is quite funky, under Fill Effects, we've got, and you can add textures and patterns, and you can just go wild. You can really make these things quite funky. But I like this, pictures. Okay, what we can have is so this, we're just looking at this whole green one here, and all 3 green ones. I'm going to select a picture, all right, and I've got this pound bag. You'll see what I mean. Okay, and then. So this is going to change. So this green, instead of being green, is going to be this pound bag. Okay? And I'll just press OK. And it's stretched. And that looks all right. I don't mind that. But if I go in and edit it again, Format Data Series, Fill Effects, we've chosen stretch here, or the default is stretch. Okay? We can stack and scale. This is great fun, this is. So how many units does a picture represent? Well, look, you can see we go up to something like 20. So let's have a picture representing 3. Okay, so you get the idea, hopefully. Press OK, and you'll see what I mean. Now look at that. Isn't that great? Each of these little pictures represents 3 million on our scale. Okay, and I just like that. I just think that's a really nice way of being able to show some data. Okay. We're going to go on and we're going to do one much more advanced thing now. Watch this. We're going to add a target. And their targets was 10 in the 1st year, the targets were 12 in the 2nd year, and the targets were 14 in the 3rd year. Okay, I'm going to make another chart out of all of it. I'm going to select it all, okay, and I'm going to press the chart wizard button, boom, and I'm going to just hit finish, because we know we could go in and we could configure it all, but excuse me. So here we go, we've got Team A, Team B, Team C and the target. Now, the problem that we've got here is that the target, in fact, I think it would actually make more sense if we did it this way, by years. Okay, so we've got year 1, so this is the new target one that we've added. This is year 2, and so you can see that these ones have exceeded the target and these ones haven't exceeded the target, but it's not really clear, is it? So instead of doing that, I want to see if I can make it even more clear to whoever's looking at this chart. So I'm going to click on my target column. Okay, I'm going to right click on it, and before we were formatting it, weren't we? So we were saying, something like make it orange or whatever like that. Okay, so we're doing the same sort of thing, but this time I'm actually going to change the type of chart that this target column is. So at the moment we know that it's a column chart. Well, what happens if I change it to a line chart? Okay, now this doesn't work. You can't like do pie chart with these because certain ones won't work, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just change this to line chart, press OK, and look at that. I think that this is a nice, because the line sort of goes across, we can immediately see that this one was, exactly, so Team A exactly hit their target, Team B exceeded it, Team C under it, and you can see that as this line goes across, you can see who's doing well and who isn't. And so this is the ability to change the type of chart for individual elements. But the key thing to take away from this is that you have to start off by doing it, you have to start off by having all of them as one type of chart, and then you select one element. So I selected the target column and I changed that one individual element. I right clicked on it and I chose a different chart type for that one particular thing. Okay, and that's how you do that. So I've just reset this worksheet back to how it looked originally, and I just want to just show something called conditional formatting. So we know what formatting is. Formatting is the ability to make a cell yellow, for example, to change the type of a font and the size of a font. These are all formatting things, okay? And what I highly recommend using is clear formats if you just want to get rid of formatting. It's great, very useful. Now, imagine that we had loads of data for loads of different teams. I'm just letting it create me really some gibberish like data, but I'm just doing that just to, doesn't really matter. And what I'll do, remember we saw earlier, we can format a cell, and I'm just going to make it a number, and I'm going to make it no decimal places. There we go, got a whole bunch of numbers there. Don't worry, just quick ways of doing it. So, all these different sales, I want to see all the different sales that were, they had to hit, let's say they had to get 15. If you don't sell 15, then you're in trouble. So let's see if there's a way that I can do that. So I'm going to select all of these, and so we're looking at formatting, conditional formatting, so it's going to be under the formatting menu. And let's bring up conditional formatting. And at its very basic level, which is what we're doing here, let's just say, so we've got two options. We can either write a formula, or we can use the built-in cell value is, and look, we've got between is initially selected. So, or we can have a whole bunch. It's not between, equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than. Well, let's say, so and this is what's called a condition here. So the cell value is less than 15. What should it do? Okay, so preview a format to use when condition is true. So at the moment we've got no format set. So let's press the format button, and let's say, so if they're under 15, okay, they're in trouble. Let's make it red. Okay, and let's press OK, and let's see what happens. Look at that. Straight away, it's changed the formatting of any cell that was below 15. Okay, and you can see that 15 isn't included, so it's only the ones that are below. All right, let me highlight those again and go into conditional formatting again. You can see, and let's add another one on. So let's say is greater than. So let's see who are or greater than or equal to. Let's see who are our superstars, who have sold more than 35 million. And the people that have sold more than 35 million, well, they can be put in blue, and they can have a pink outline around it. Okay, and their font can be a light colour to stand out against the blue, white. Okay, I mean, it's not going to look very pretty, but I'm just showing you the idea. So that gives us a preview. So if they're less than 15, all red. If they're greater than or equal to, so 35 or above, then it's going to do it blue, make it white, and put a pink outline around it. Lovely. But let's just have a look what that looks like. Now look at that. So we've got 36, you know, and again, interestingly, it hasn't done it for the 35. Let me just select that and let me just have a quick look at that. Greater than or equal to 35. Ah! I know why that is. Okay, let me explain something. The reason it's done that is I very quickly made all of these cells not display all the digits in them. Do you remember I went into format cells and I chose 0 decimal places? This cell actually doesn't have 35 in it. It actually has 34.8 in it. But it rounded it up to 35 when I said don't use any decimal places. And so because of that, the actual conditional formatting is based on the absolute value rather than the sort of abbreviated value that I forced it to show. Okay? So hopefully you understand that. A little bit of a technical thing there. If I make that 1 decimal place for that one cell, it then obviously makes sense. Or indeed if I change it to 35, and you can see that these things are live. So 34 goes like that. If this is 33, okay, if this was 2, it'll turn red. Okay, isn't that great? So we've just got ways of instantly being able to format the data, and you can see that you know, when it's over, this is a relatively small table, you've got a big table with loads of sales and you need to hit certain data points, then having this change, or we actually use it on one of the things we use it for on our calls is national insurance numbers. If the national insurance number isn't a certain type, then we sometimes have to get extra information, and we have it, you know, change colour so that we know we don't have to try and remember what these certain national insurance numbers are. So you can have it hit points and change colours. There we are. We're just coming to the end of that. So we've had quite a packed lesson here. So we looked at absolute versus relative cell references, and so the only thing to sort of remember there is that if you put a dollar, if you use the dollar sign, just denotes that you don't mess with that cell can't change. Okay. We then looked at graphs, and then we looked at conditional formatting. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll be with you next week.